I just think that the true like essence of an artist is someone who really is not ever satisfied. Like they just want to continue creating and wanting to continue to expand their, you know, their skills and way of like viewing the world, and how that can be represented in choreography or art or painting or film or whatever the case may be. So
Happy New Year and welcome to Artversations, a meditative conversation about the artistic process. I'm your host, Brie, like the cheese. Thank you for clicking on this show out of so many podcasts. You must be an artist or an art enthusiast. If you're feeling some sort of creative blockage or needing a little bit of inspiration, this is the place for you. A couple of ways that you can join in on this community is to follow the podcast Instagram at ArtVersationsPod, leave a comment about the episode after you've tuned in, connect with the guests through their platforms. You can also email artversationspodcast@gmail.com with your thoughts, suggestions. Let me know who you want on the pod, reviews, all of the above. All right, enough plugging. Let's hear from the first guest of 2023. He is an LA-bound dancer, choreographer, and movement teacher. We talk all about his various past and upcoming projects, drumming, and we even get into the ups and downs of applying for an international visa. If you are currently applying to work in a completely new country, this is the episode for you. It's tough out there. So get comfy with us, settle in. Here's an hour with Kevin Lau.
I hope it keeps just going from here, you know?
I hope so too. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's always, going back to what we're saying about like helpful for artists, but I keep getting people being like, I listened and I want to be a guest, or I tuned in, and like it seems to be something that's super needed.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of trying to ride that train, you know?
Yeah.
But
I think it's really needed. I think just because it's such a fast-paced industry sometimes that we don't really take the time to talk about things and like just reflect and even if you don't like something, like express that, you know. And I just feel like in order for things in the industry that I feel like can be shifted or changed, like we need to talk about it, otherwise it's just gonna continue going on a, you know,
completely
cycle. So but yeah, I'm really glad that you're doing this.
Thanks for reaching out.
Of course.
I saw your name and I was like, oh yeah, of course I would have Kevin on. Like
yeah, because I reached out to Kristen and she recommended that I reach out to you. So yeah,
Krishna Karkoni?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah.
Because we briefly met a little bit because of the Common Ground Dance Festival, just kind of in passing. And I remember watching you perform Kristen's duet with
with Nick.
With Nick, and I was like, oh my gosh, like there's a movement quality there that I really resonated with, and I also like want to hear more about how drumming and percussion comes into practice. Like. Yeah. So I'm happy to be sitting here with you.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, going off of that, like, do you start with rhythm? Is that like your main step into process?
It's a big part. So I started drumming when I was about 10, 4th grade, and I was doing that like in tandem with like doing hip hop. When I started in hip hop, and then I did ballet, and then eventually like modern contemporary jazz and all that. And then now I'm actually going back to kind of hip hop. Like I stopped hip hop for a long time, but I would say now more so than ever though. Usually whether it's like freestyle, improvise, or like choreograph, like music is such a big part of it. Yeah, my brain just works really rhythmically. So like even if like I don't really know exactly what the intention is, like thematically of what I want to like choreograph or create, I have to like really resonate with what's happening rhythmically and also musically. And so that's always been kind of like a jumping point, you know, for me, to be able to start. I definitely could do a piece in silence, but I would say if it was up to me, I probably wouldn't. Just because I just love music so much that I need something going on besides just the movement. If of course like silence brought out, you know, more in the process and like made what I was trying to do clearer, then of course then I would do it in silence. But I think especially if I'm working in the studio, I always have to have some sort of connection to rhythm and like musicality. So
It's like a heartbeat, keeps going.
Exactly, yeah.
That's cool.
With drumming, like I feel like, especially because like in high school, like I played with other musicians and stuff, and like did jazz band and all this stuff. So like when I listen to music and like when I create, like there's so many layers that you can, you know, choreograph to. So it's like you can choreograph on like the bass sections, you know, that are just like steady and consistent, or you can do, you know, the harmonies. Like there's just so much, and I think it's definitely like played a big part in terms of me dancing as well too, and also taking class. Like if I know the music really well, like regardless if I don't really know the choreography very well, it kind of helps me adapt very quick. As long as I'm comfortable with that, everything will kind of hopefully fall into place.
Right.
Yeah.
I totally get that.
But yeah, it's been, and I stopped drumming for a while because I was just so focused on dancing. And when I moved out of Toronto and I went to live in Calgary for a year, I stopped drumming it altogether, just because like I didn't have access to it and all that stuff. But ever since like I started coming back home here and there, like between college and stuff, I just started picking it up again and playing quite a bit now, just like for fun, and just helps a lot.
Did you like find a newfound passion for it outside of like the academic, like high school band, you know?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Did it become more of like a passionate venture, or is it still kind of like training and
no, it's definitely like it's definitely more of a passion. I mean, when I was in school, it was always just fun for me too. Like it didn't feel that academic, because I think like I loved reading like music charts and like, you know, adding like fillers in these little sections where it was like the trumpeter playing and the bass is playing, and like being able to like work with other musicians. I think that's actually, I miss that, to be honest. Like I think playing with other musicians in that setting, like even though it's like an academic setting, it feels like super like alive. So yeah, I don't know, it's always been fun for me. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's good. That's
good.
You mentioned your training at Boston Conservatory. It's really cool that you kind of like moved around a lot. Like started in Toronto, Calgary for School of Alberta Ballet, and then Boston, and then you left Boston to go to Germany.
Yeah.
Is that right? Like,
well, so I graduated in 2020,
right,
and I was gonna stay another year, like in the U.S. I was gonna stay like and do my OPT and go to New York or LA.
Okay.
But obviously, pandemic happened, and
that
so
thing,
yeah. So then I
like,
had to kind of pivot a bit. Was able to get a visa fairly quickly and freelanced to move to Berlin for a year, and did some freelancing there. It was great. It was just like not only like different culture, different language, and like different way of like looking at art and dance. Like it was just like a very much like a healing and awakening process for me too. Because I think I was also going through a lot like personally too, like leading up to the pandemic. And I think the pandemic for me really just like allowed me, instead of like shoving it under the rug and moving on, like just sit with it and get to know myself more as an artist. And
hard to do.
Yeah.
Especially when you're not home.
Yeah. And especially when like I moved in there 2 months in, we were in a lockdown for 6 months. So I barely knew anyone. I was stuck in my apartment for about 6 months. So yeah, it was pretty tough, and I was like really contemplating coming home too. But I stuck it out. Things started opening up. I started to get more, you know, auditions here, there, some jobs, and went to do B12 there. Did the workshop there. So it ended on such a high, and so I'm really, really glad that I really kind of saw it through you know, the whole way. Yeah.
It was worth all that like turmoil.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like 2020, I also graduated that year, and it, like you said, kind of put me in a perspective of like, what do I actually want to do if I can't work in the way that I wanted to or dreamed of, like when I was in college or university. Like this feeling of like adapting
for sure
is like, I think, so prominent in your history and your journey so far. Like like I just feel like there's so many ways that you've put yourself into a location or a process and not having like a safety net, and I think that's super admirable as an artist. Like,
thank you. Yeah,
just kind of jumping in.
Yeah, Berlin was pretty scary. I mean, I definitely, the months leading up to like applying for the visa, I was like constantly emailing different choreographers in the city and like project-based companies and all that. I think I like probably at least like 50 to 60 emails, maybe heard back from like 2 or 3. So it was like,
wow.
And then when I got there, it was very casual. Like one of the choreographers that was based there, he just like asked me to come. He goes, because like he wanted to bring all these other guest artists in and he couldn't. And now the fact that I was coming, he goes, maybe you can help join our production, like very casually like that. And so it was new because I also feel like with the pandemic, I never like got closure from my time in Boston.
Yeah.
Because we were all just like shut down and like forced to just like continue. And I don't think I had much of an issue because like I just felt like, okay, well, what's next? But well into freelancing and over the last like couple of years, like I felt like I didn't really get to still like have closure for that. Until recently when I actually visited Boston again and like visited, and that was like super, super nice. But for so long I felt like it was just kind of like, you know, lagging and stuff there. And so I just felt like things didn't really get to come to a proper closure. Yeah.
I totally relate.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was. It was like this feeling of I'd spent 4 years working up to being able to say like I finished it and getting the, you know, traditional cap and gown. I had to go like into postgraduate situation like alone. And like, yes, I had all these resources from school, but like they didn't have their support either. So I couldn't really like rely on like my teachers and my professors and my collaborators to like help me with a launching point. So I totally relate to that feeling of like not getting closure. And then, but I think it's really cool that you were like, okay, what's next? Like, let's keep going, you know?
Yeah.
Because it's out of your control and like,
for sure,
you know? Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I think I would have gone a bit crazy if I stayed at home like that whole year. Just because I think because like what you're saying, like I try to always try to go to the next thing. It's never like I'm never satisfied. Like once I'm doing something for a while, like I always have to just like switch and pivot.
Interesting.
So it was driving me crazy that I just didn't know what was gonna happen, and but I guess it worked out in a way, you know. But like looking back at it, I was just like worried about like what was gonna happen. Also like what was gonna happen to like the industry too, because I thought everything. I was like, I don't know if people are gonna want to go like see live shows coming out of the pandemic. Do they value art as much in person, or is it gonna become this like digital age of like viewing art technology and with TikTok and everything and all this stuff? It's very like instant gratification culture, and so I was worried that people wouldn't want to go sit down and watch an hour and a half length, you know, dance piece or something like that. So, but I'm really glad that we've come out of it, and people still want to see it, and I just didn't think we'd be back here. So it's such a luxury too.
It's so precious and sacred. I mean, film is its own medium, and I think like, you know, you've worked a little bit in film maybe because of necessity, but also like that's actually now where you want to focus your attention is to film and commercial, maybe less concert, but
I think I definitely still want to keep the concert. I think what happened was I wanted to really just open my, you know, repertoire to like, you know, doing more stuff in the film industry. Just because I think it was always just kind of a childhood dream of mine, like to like do like backup dancing or like music videos or like work on sets and stuff like that. It's just like super, super fun to me. Pays really well too. I'm not gonna lie, you know. But it also just like opens it up so that I do have, you know, more flexibility to like not only expand my like, you know, artistic pursuits, but also just like make a living and like, you know, because I just feel like as much as sometimes like I want to do only concert dance, like it could be, you know, somewhat limiting sometimes if things don't happen. So just opening up to possibilities and seeing where that takes me, I guess. And
LA is the place, I think, to do that.
I was really intimidated like when I got there. Like I was just, I didn't know what to expect. I thought like, you know, everyone, obviously there's so much talent there and it's just so many people that I would just kind of get washed up in all that. But it's interesting, when I got there, the contemporary scene, I would say, is very much, I feel it's kind of its own niche in the commercial industry, separate from, or not necessarily separate, but like apart from like the hip hop industry. And like, I felt very accepted and just like supported there. It was much like community. It wasn't, I mean, I'm sure there are definitely, you know, it can be very competitive and people can't be that nice, but there are definitely, I definitely felt the love and I felt the support there, which surprised me. Just because I felt like I would be very lost when I was going out there, so spread out, so many people, and just no,
absolutely. There's, you know, there's a real merit to like having a community especially if you're coming from outside of the country and trying to immigrate into this, competitive, very, very well-known industry in LA of film and TV and Hollywood and all that stuff. And I think having that community of people who are going to be like, no, you can come too, doesn't matter where you're from. I mean, it really goes, like, for me, it goes back to, like, as artists, like, is the location of where we are so important, because I think the work is so similar, and even between film and concert, there's so many skills that overlap.
For sure.
That it's kind of like, well, of course you could do both. Of course we can, travel everywhere and bring all of the tools that we have.
Yeah.
Like, do you find, like, those mediums, like, intersect a lot?
For sure. I think because most of the people that I know that are in the commercial industry very much grew up in a competition studio and very much was in that kind of world. So there's only a few really that I know, or one or two that I know, like close friends of mine, that really came from more of a concert background or a BFA background. And because I feel like a lot of people that I went to school with are very much like, they want to, move to Europe, and that's fantastic. I mean, I still, that's still something I want to do down the line too, and continue to do that. But I think there's been a bit of divide, like it's a separate entity, commercial and concert. And I just think at the end of the day, dance is dance, and like, especially a lot of ballet companies or LA Dance Project, and like, they're doing a lot of stuff with film, and like, and even in like, you go see like MTV Music Awards and stuff, they do like a lot more like balletic or like contemporary choreography now. So it's like really mixed, like interdisciplinary in terms of that way. And so I want to contribute to that merge, because I think it's just dance is dance at the end of the day. Totally. And they might take place in different mediums, but it all still comes from, stems from very much the same place of like wanting to express yourself and connection and movement and
absolutely.
So
all that good stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I totally relate. Just going back a little bit more specifically about what you've worked on, maybe we'll kind of say that we've closed the Germany chapter. You were freelancing and working there. And then you came back to Canada for a bit, and I saw that you were working with William Young in Choreographic Gems, the Peggy Baker film. How did that process go?
That was really great. I was just really humbled to be in the room with Peggy. I think she's just a kind soul, and obviously an icon.
It's so sad that she's stopping.
I know,
Totally. You got her at a good time.
I know. So what had happened was David Norsworthy was dancing that role, and he was moving to Sweden for 6 months, January through June, to rehearsal direct. So he needed somebody that he could recommend to learn his roles and stuff in a shorter amount of time. And so I went in for a month and learned like 7 out of 9
oh my gosh.
little kind of like gems. They weren't like super long, like maybe like 5 minutes or something each. But like learned the choreography from 7 different films, but a handful of like choreographers that were big in the 1970s in Toronto that she wanted to kind of like basically restage their work. So it was really nice. The rehearsals were super intimate. There wasn't that many people, and I got to really like learn from her one-on-one, which was such a treat. And I just I learned more of myself as a dancer in terms of also like how I should carry myself in a rehearsal room too, and the amount of professionalism that is required too. Because I also been in processes where it's very free, and like it's more improvisation based, and so like the choreographers, like they allow you to feed more. But with this type of work, it was very like things were already set, so I had to kind of walk into that, like learning it without learning it for what it was, and respecting the work for what it was too.
That's such a different process.
Yeah. And then it was funny with William because I actually met William in high school.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, because he choreographed a piece at Earl Haig when I was there. And so he remembered me, but I hadn't seen him in like 8 years or so. So it was a while.
You're like, hey.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He was like, your hair is so long, like, at the time. But cool. it was so great seeing him. Yeah, he's the nicest guy ever too. And just
talk really... about the way that he uses film and concert. I find his like process is so multidisciplinary.
For sure.
He'd be a cool person to like lead a room.
Yeah, he really knows what he wants. He has a very like clear idea of what he wants to happen in the space. And vision for that, and the filming process went very smoothly.
That's good.
Yeah, we filmed it down at the theater center on Queen Street West, so
Love
it was nice. Right when the lockdown hit, so we were like the only ones working there.
Wow.
In January, like a year ago.
Oh my gosh.
Literally a year ago, actually.
Yes, like Omicron lockdown.
Yeah.
Wowie.
Oh my gosh.
So much has changed since
That's
then.
crazy. Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
I saw the performance that Peggy like included in this year's like choreographic gems, because you also worked on the one in the summer, right? So
you know the play that she did. So a lot of the choreography that was in the play is the same choreo that I'd learned, but so we filmed it. It was already like they had it already edited, I think, and she just wanted to release them as the play was taking place, like leading or the weeks leading up to the play, I guess.
Very cool.
In that way, yeah.
So I was watching these 1970 pieces, and the choreography, was very simple in my eyes, but I'm sure at the time seemed like groundbreaking.
For sure.
And the concepts of like, I don't know, did you work with that like big balloon?
No, that was Shauna. Yeah,
right,
so she worked on that. But no, I would be there in rehearsal and would see that and be like, I could imagine in the 70s, like seeing something like that would be pretty groundbreaking too. Yeah.
Did like when you were trying to remount it or retell the story, like, did you find yourself, because you mentioned like, okay, it was all set, there's no room for improvisation, like where did you fit your own practice or your own like artistic choices into that like very rigid box?
That's a good question.
If you could, I don't know.
It was a challenge.
Yeah, I bet.
I think I would definitely say it was the very first process I've ever been in that there wasn't that much room for that. And I don't say that as a bad thing. It was very much just because the work was so concise and simplified that it's like it's either kind of like this is the way to do it, right. And like it's like, especially with the way I like to move, like I guess what I'm trying to say is like I remember in rehearsal when I was like, when David was helping me and he was like teaching me the part, he would say like there was a section where we were kind of like turning to the floor, and I would be adding a bit more like spiral and stuff like that, and it's just like that exactly stuff, yeah. But I feel like if you have to think about it, like back in the 70s, they probably wouldn't have been like moving that way, you know what I mean? And so I think it's like when I understood that, like that I was respecting what was happening in that era, that I couldn't be adding things from the 21st century into it, you know?
Totally.
It was a challenge for me. It was a challenge in many ways, but it was unlike anything I've ever done. Like it had to teach me to be like very simple and just clear.
Yeah.
Instead of always trying to like add more like quality and texture and all that, like before it was all that. So
completely.
Yeah.
I mean, being able to like look at a piece of art for what it was at its time and the intention of why we want to remount it now, like I feel like that's an incredible skill to have, so that, you know, if you can do the simple and you can pick up and execute, like I imagine working with like Anne Plamondon or like more contemporary of this age choreographers, like there is now that like extreme shift to here I am now in this space. I can do my own improv. Yeah. I can be more present of who I am in this moment.
For sure.
Did you find that with Anne?
For sure. Yeah. She has a very distinct, obviously like aesthetic and method and function of way she likes to move the body and carry the body, and and just because it's very, you know, derived very clearly from like her influence experience with rubber band, also
Right.
like with crystal pipes, so it's very like she knows exactly what she wants. But I feel with Anne, because a lot of, I feel like in terms of the way I like to improvise resonates a lot with how she likes to choreograph and the type of movement style. It gave me a bit more freedom to contribute more. And also she's super collaborative, so she likes it when you take her movement, because she'll say like, okay, we created this phrase, like why don't we take elements of this phrase and like you two over there like create something together and adapt it this way, and then she'll tweak it, and then you keep like going back and forth until it becomes, you know, a very clear image. And
it keeps expanding, changing.
I would say I definitely, not that I didn't with, you know, in the Peggy Baker process, I think it was just very different than what I was used to. And so
Totally, yeah.
for Anne's process, I definitely think I was used to more of that type of approach, that kind of like, you know, both people are contributing and feeding more into it, versus with Peggy, because it was also a recreation of something that already existed. I wanted to do the piece justice by keeping it very simple and true to what, you know, the integrity of what it was originally created. So
you can do both.
Yeah, exactly.
There it is.
Yeah,
you know, like
there's range. There's range. Exactly. Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like when you get into a process, for me at least, I feel like I have to be a vessel, right? I have to like answer to what is called and the intentions of what we're trying to make. And sometimes I do quiet my own choices and like, you know, keep them inside for the sake of remounting, for the sake of time, for the sake of, you know. So just being able to like find that freedom, like I'm wondering too, like as you've traveled around, like I'm sure you've like developed your voice from all of these different places. And like even when you make your own stuff, as a creator, like did you feel influenced by like any of these places most, or?
Yeah, I think in terms of like movement quality, I think working with Anne specifically, just because that was also the most recent,
right,
really shifted the way I looked at movement, whether it was like initiating points or also just like, I think sometimes, especially when I get so familiar with like moving in a very certain way, it's sometimes hard to push yourself outside of the box. And so I think with Anne, like she really like not only just took what you had, but like stretched it out so that, you know, you could expand beyond your limits, and
cool,
and challenged your body more physically than it was comfortable doing.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think especially with like floor work or whether it's like improvisation, like, you know, it gets to a point where it's so familiar with you, for me in terms of my body, that it doesn't feel like I'm working that much. And she really pushed me to stretch that more and to challenge myself, and then that took me to, you know, just want to challenge myself more choreographically as well in creating. So yeah, for sure.
And you're gonna see her soon in March.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
We're on a film.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, another film. We're gonna be working for over a course of 2 weeks, just like remounting what the piece that we had in Saint Sauveur in the summer, and just like adapting that to film. And so I'm excited. Yeah, I don't really know that much about it, so I'm just open to whatever's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the best way to create it.
Exactly. Yeah. And then actually later in the fall, she's gonna create, expand the piece that she did at Saint Sauveur into a longer length piece.
Ooh.
For Dance Dance, like in the festival in the fall there. So
how long was the original?
The original was about 40 minutes, 45 maybe.
Oh, still long.
I know, yeah. So
and for physical work too?
For sure, yeah. Like we were on stage the whole time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I mean, she definitely incorporated a lot of elements of like voice into it and microphone, and so so it wasn't necessarily like all dancing, but we were all present on stage, kind of contributing to what was happening. But she wants to create a longer, or like phase 2 of the piece, and the plan is to present that like at Place des Arts.
Cool. In
the fall. So
I love Montreal so much.
It's so great there. Yeah.
I feel like there's and I'd love to hear your thoughts too, like there's such a wonderful community and support around artists, specifically I guess movement artists because I'm a bit biased, but like the general public I feel like is so much more entrenched into watching art, and like kind of what we were going back to about like the pandemic kind of pulling us out of live performance. I feel like I was in Montreal in the summer and I was like, everyone seems to really want to see live performance here. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but just like the fact that like the festival, the quartier, like the street there is like filled with buskers every night and stuff. Like, I don't know how you felt like being in that scene. And
I loved
like,
it.
Yeah.
I think Toronto lacks on that department in many ways.
Completely. Totally.
Yeah, it was very much like I had a friend that was in our cast as well too, and she held an art installation in her apartment with her husband, and
Nice.
and yeah, in their apartment, like they have a dance studio in their apartment, like it's like
that.
that kind of vibe, and like everyone's coming in, watching it, like talking about it afterwards, sharing drinks, like it's very like just chill and just like artists and just enjoying that and part of that community. And I'm like, I don't know if this would happen in Toronto. I mean, and if it did, it would be very different.
Yes.
It just felt very, Montreal just feels like, I think it's because live art and like it's so ingrained in their culture and the DNA that it's not so much like, okay, we're gonna have to like step away from work to be able to do this. Like it's very much ingrained with balance with what their lifestyle is, and so I love it. Yeah, every time I'm there, I just really enjoy myself. So
you're willing to go back.
Yeah, for sure.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Going back to a little bit about your own like creative process, you made a solo for Common Ground Dance Festival.
Yeah.
I didn't get to see it. I was so mad, but I'd love to hear like about how it felt to be, in a process with just yourself. I'm sure you had other collaborators, but like, what was that like to be with just you after so many community stuff?
I will say that I rather choreograph on somebody and for people than on myself. I get frustrated with myself.
Oh, me too.
It's just like, it takes me a long time to settle down on like what I want in terms of movement, because I'll like improvise for a long time, be like, oh, I like this element, but then like when it comes to actually setting things, I don't I get really impatient with myself and like antsy, so that's always a bit of a challenge. But I think like when I did do this one, I want it to be improvisation, but I want it to be all set, and so everything I was doing in terms of like my pathways and like formations and like cues within the music score was obviously set, but I wanted, because it was also like very immersive, like and close to spectators watching, like I wanted to be very spontaneous in that way.
Cool.
And so I always feel a bit better improvising.
Yes,
but it's definitely a challenge though. I think it showed me that I want to be a choreographer that can settle on movement as well and be a bit more concrete with ideas than always just relying on improvisation. I think improvisation is great, but I think sometimes it's become too comfortable for me that like it's hard for me to really like have concrete ideas and like set something and like
Gotcha.
So,
yeah, I mean, it's like so great for practice, right? Because for me at least, I feel like I need to get out of my head a little bit and get more into like what my body is like instinctually doing. So I'll usually incorporate improvisation into just practice, like not usually when I create. And I think there's like a difference between like creating and analyzing something, and sometimes for me those like two processes get really like muddled together. So like just going off of what you said about like frustration in the rehearsal with yourself, like how did you I guess how did you come to like make those concrete choices? Was it from the music, or was it from just the fact that like a choice felt so set and you wanted to recreate it each time?
I would say when I was creating it, it was definitely the music. Yeah, so I had a friend of mine.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, yeah, I had a friend of mine that created the score that I actually met in LA too.
Cool.
And I had him create the score, and I would work with him like, oh, I want this part a bit longer, I want this a bit more subtle, less busy, and then I use the voice, like I use components of my own voice actually in recording, and we kind of distorted that in there as well too.
Cool.
But because I knew those cues and I wanted that in the music, and I knew how I wanted it to sound, like the movement was very much impacted, those like set choices were really impacted by those like very specific parts in the music. And then when I worked with Simone, that was in Marie's piece as well, from Montreal. Simone Reynald.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the pronounced last name. My French is terrible, but yeah.
Totally.
But he came in as like an outside eye, like a dramaturg, to kind of like watch a couple times. And when he came in, he really helped me just like find more, concrete ideas, or take what I was already doing and like making that set. And so I think I work a lot better with that than like with myself, and so
that's fair,
because I think sometimes with myself I allow myself to get away with things, and I'm like, okay, this is fine, but like it's always nice when you have someone else who doesn't really know that much about the work. They know a bit of it, to be able to like see it from the outside and offer like an alternate perspective. So yeah
it's like important too with the setting that is at the Leave Life's an Art Park. When I think, at least for my experience, you're getting spectators who maybe haven't been introduced into dance or are passing by and just kind of like, what's going on,
Yeah.
So having like, I can imagine like having someone who's like an external perspective gives you so much more information about how it's going to be perceived, I guess.
For sure. I just feel also, especially after going to school, like especially in Boston, that was the first time where we had, like, I took a dramaturgy class.
Oh, yeah.
And we talked about that and studied a bit more of like dramaturgy and like, and its like presence in like Europe as well too.
Hi, Kat. Yeah. He's like, dramaturge?
Yeah, exactly. I don't think every work necessarily requires one, but I think
He's like,
he thinks so, yes. I think it's like, I almost kind of think of it as like a therapist, in a way, like for your work. Yeah. Like you don't always have to wait for yourself to get trapped necessarily to be like, oh wait, I need an outside eye now.
I see.
Same with like it's like, I just think therapies could be great for everybody, It's just like, I think of dramaturg, even though they might not, some process they might serve more than other people in a process, like I think it's just very like healthy to have an outside eye. It just can bring so much more layers and like texture to the work, that because I think when you're so focused and you're wanting to create something and make something happen, it's like it can be very hard to like see outside of that
completely,
yeah. Especially when you're so focused. And so in my experience, by working with somebody else, it's helped to like open me up even more,
totally,
and not just settle for what I want.
So within all of those like choices that you made, and then you bring in someone else, and it's like, okay, now we have a bit more of a clear path. I love that.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, I think even someone like a dramaturg who's not a dancer too, sometimes that's very interesting.
Sweet.
I think it's great when you work with other dancers, that can be an outside eye, but I think someone who's not necessarily like, they maybe they know familiar with movement, but they're not necessarily like a dancer, and so that can even bring a bigger perspective into things too.
That's so true. I didn't think about that.
Just also because like they don't have all these like preconceived notions of like what dance should look like or what's aesthetically pleasing,
right.
But really what, as a viewer, honestly, how they resonate with it, seeing something for the first time. So I want to do more work with and collaborate with people in that sense. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. I love hearing about your process. Yeah, just the fact that like you go back to music, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you've worked so much. You've been in so many different places, and now what we're really here to talk about is that you're making the jump to LA for good. Hopefully.
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 We'll see.
It's all hypothetical.
Yeah.
Honestly, wherever you end up, it's gonna be fine. Because you have so many skills.
Oh, I appreciate that.
But yeah, what made you come to this decision?
So when I was in Berlin and I was in lockdown, I was like just journaling a lot and reflecting on what I really wanted to do. And jumping into commercial was by no means like I don't like concert dancing. Like I love it just as much. It's not. I really think it was just really me opening up to want to do more. Whether it's taking concert dance and like being in environments where it can be put on film or it can be put on, a pop artist in a music video that's a bit more abstract and conceptualized than just kind of like your typical, pop music video. And so
Justin Timberlake might need some.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah. I mean, the dream, right?
Yeah.
So I think like I just when I was reflecting, I was like, man, that'd be really, really cool. And I don't know if it's gonna be what I want to do for the rest of my career, but it's just where I'm at right now. And I think
cool.
Whether that's in LA or somewhere else, I don't know. But that's what I'm trying to aim for. And I think it would be, I think I rather try it than and not like it than say I never tried it. And so I think it's just I really wanted to like just open up and see what the possibilities could be. You know?
The time is now.
Yeah.
So you never know when there's going to be another lockdown.
Oh my gosh.
You know?
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know necessarily that it's that deep. I think for me, I think it's just where my mind's at. But yeah, I hope it, whether it's LA or not, like I hope it works out. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because hopefully this potential visa, it opens you up to like everywhere in America. And there's so many different sectors of like dance. I mean, LA for sure is definitely, in my experience, so film and TV oriented, but like there's also like a contemporary scene there too, a concert scene there too. Is there any like, is it New York that's also like, or maybe like, I don't know, Missouri or something like something smaller like?
I mean, I would definitely love to work in New York too. I think I see myself more so living in LA just because I like the overall like vibe as well there too. I think New York is great. I think sometimes it can be quite hustle and bustle, but I would love to go and work and do projects here and there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Kind
but
of
I think
around,
but I think in terms of like the US as a whole, like I think it has a lot more opportunity in terms of commercial and film and TV, and that's the industry that I want to like expand my my repertoire in. So yeah.
That's the spot. That's
the
spot.
Yeah.
And like you said, you have a community of people, like I feel like they're just waiting for you to come,
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate that.
You know, like it's, I think, I hope it all goes well. I feel like within the visa application process, from what I've heard from other folks, it's like all about persevering and finding ways to stand up for yourself. I don't know if you have any like stories from that process already, or if you feel like if someone was listening to this who also wanted to go on that journey, like how would you, what kind of advice would you give them to keep going?
Yeah, like specifically if they wanted to go to the US and do that. I would say that if there's a few days out of the year during your time that you're not that you're going through the process that you don't want to do that, I would say I wouldn't go for it. Yeah, it can take some time, and so I think I would say that it has to be in a very consistent like goal in mind and thought, I would say, going through it. That's not to say to not try. I just think that the people that I know that are based there now, throughout their whole time, they really, really wanted it the whole time, and they just kind of kept going. But I would say if you're passionate about it and that's what you want, and you're gonna do everything you can to get it, just to keep going, because I think I'm just a believer that everything kind of happens at the right moment in time, when it's supposed to happen. So yeah.
This is the time for you.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
I hope so too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much in your resume and your history that I feel like you could bring to that scene there. And also we're at such a pivotal point in contemporary dance, whatever that word means, that it is changing, in my opinion. There's fusions, there's different mediums being involved, technology being involved. So it seems like this is a time where if you are living in LA, or if you're living in an American like culture hub of dance and art, like we might as well see work from all artists, not just from LA based, you know, who have been doing it forever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I guess I'm trying to say, like, there is, as a consumer of art myself, like, I really am looking for artists who are coming from different places, who are coming from different mythologies, who are, like, bringing to the mainstream something that isn't mainstream.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's what makes it richer, too.
Completely.
Because otherwise we're just going to be doing the same thing, you know, for decades. And, you know, I don't think we need another pop hit, or we don't need necessarily, like, you know, a really, really cool music video or piece. Like, what I think builds our community is, like, bringing in elements from very different facets of it instead of just the same formula.
Totally. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, because I don't know if at least for me, I don't know if I would be comfortable calling myself an artist if I didn't constantly, like, evolve in that way. Because otherwise it's just kind of like you're replicating and you're just kind of like trying to recreate something. And I think, in my opinion, and maybe there might be people that disagree, but I just think that the true, like, essence of an artist is someone who really is not ever satisfied. Like, they just want to continue creating and wanting to continue to expand their, you know, their skills and way of, like, viewing the world, and how that can be represented in choreography or art or painting or film or whatever the case may be. So yeah. Whoa. Yeah
that's huge. That gave me chills.
Yeah, because otherwise, like, if we're not changing, and if we're not shifting the way we view things and adding, you know, more experiences and more depth to things, then what are we doing? You know? Yeah, at the end of the day.
Completely. Replicating.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
That's so huge. That's such a major, for me at least, like, way of making. It really is. It goes back to intention and not wasting anyone's time, especially if you're going to be collaborating with, you know, so many different facets of artists too. Like, yeah, intentional art making is a huge thing for me. So I'm glad that you also see that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's just really important. I think that's also, I feel like, always been kind of like, you know, a driving force for me, is just to continue challenging. And because I think I could really feel it physically and mentally when things are just sitting, and they've just been sitting for a while. It's time to, like, shift things up, you know. So completely.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see where you end up.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you.
And how you know, bring everything that you've learned into this new artistic world that we're post-pandemic-ish living in. And coming up as well, before you leave anywhere, you're teaching at Cawthra in February. Yeah, I know that kind of that was very recent, just came about actually today, so I'm excited. I think it's been a while since I've taught, and also it's been a while since I've, like, set movement on, like, students and stuff too, so I'm really, really excited. Oh, so it's a choreographic process. Yeah, so two of the classes are, one's a performance class and one's, like, for the grade 11s, and so I'm choreographing a piece for, like, their upcoming showcases later this year, and then I'm also on top of that just teaching a series of a few, like, master classes here or there. But I'm excited because I feel like I've had all these ideas kind of balled up, especially during the pandemic, and I haven't really been able to get them out. Like, I've also created, like, a few, like, you know, homemade films here and there, and just, like, ways to kind of, like, just stay busy. But
I just have all these ideas that I want to kind of get out, and I'm excited and just grateful I have that, like, a platform to be able to share that with other people too.
Get all the journal entries out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Especially like, yeah, especially because like that's such an age in the high school, like, especially like, you know, you might come from a very ballet or competition or technical background, but I think it's I think if we can kind of implement like the strong sense of like finding yourself as an artist and what you want to create, instead of just, can I do the move, or can I do, you know, be technically strong, there's so much more to being a performer and a dancer. Yeah, I hope if I can share that with them, then that'd be fantastic.
No, yeah, I mean, being able to like take what you've shared and then share it with others, it's the best feeling. And it brings us forward into making sure that we're not going back to past ways of moving and constantly expanding. So I want to challenge myself to be in a place where I'm not so comfortable, where I have to really stretch out and think and think out of the box, not to be cliche, but think out of the box. Totally. That's really, really cool. I hope that all goes well.
Thank you. Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to promote, or if you're teaching like anywhere else?
Yeah, I hope to sub a bit more over the next couple of months. Amazing. For sure. But I actually kind of want to ask you a question.
Oh my gosh! Turn it on me, sure. Yes.
Yeah, I guess like when it, you know, this has just been like something on my mind like during the pandemic, but like when it comes to like auditions or applying for auditions, or being in a position where you feel like you're assessed as a dancer or an artist, and having to do them multiple at a time, over and over again, like I'm just curious to see, like, for you, like how it's how you've been able to cope mentally also with like you know, knowing my worth as an artist, and that sometimes, you know, even it might seem not personal, it can also feel very personal because you've devoted so much time to the craft, and like how you've navigated that. Talk
about therapy. That's such something I'm still trying to mentally like stabilize, because I do get so attached to a certain job, a certain application, a certain residency, whatever it is, because it's passion, right? Like that's where I start with feeling excited about something, or wanting to do my best for this thing. And so I think that's where I get, if I do get rejected, or if there's something that doesn't happen the same way that I wanted it to, I get defeated. I feel this sense of as if I'm wasting my own time. And I think it's hard to know exactly what jobs, what applications, what people to work with, when I'm still trying to develop my own voice and emerge as an artist. That's so true. I think it, like, if I'm being assessed and kind of put in a box for that one thing, quote unquote in a box, I do have to quiet that little voice in my head that's like, you should be all things and expand out of this box. Like, don't, you know, sometimes I have to like be a thing for someone, right? Or for something.
Yeah, self-talk is such a big thing. Yeah. And it could really work in your favor or work against you, I think, sometimes too. Because I've definitely, especially not even just taking class or whether it's an audition or something, like I just feel like if my mind is not there and it's not right, and all these thoughts are going like, you don't know the choreography, you're not what they're looking for, there's better dancers in the room, like all the stuff that goes in and out, it's like if I don't quiet that down or at least turn the notch down, it's like it's just gonna overtake me. And yeah, it's a big thing, I think, and I think it's an ongoing process for all of us too. I think it's never something that we will ever like necessarily concretely like figure out, you know. But
if I do, someone should tell me that that's not the right place to go, you know. Like,
yeah, for sure. Yeah, because it's like I just also find it so like I find it so interesting how auditions work. They're very quick. They're very like, okay, you know, especially if you're auditioning for a company, you know, whether it be like Ballet BC or like, especially a lot of these like contemporary ballet company or ballet jazz or something like that. Like, it's like you go and take a ballet class, they cut you after the class. You go and do your rep class, they cut you after that. And then they hold, it's like very much like based off on the last 4 hours, they're going to assess the last 10 years that you've been working or more up to getting to that point.
That doesn't seem fair at all.
Yeah. So I just find that concept very interesting. I find a lot of the way that the industry moving now is that like people just want to work with their friends and people just want to work with people that they trust.
Yeah.
And I find that that's more of like a genuine exchange to me. Right. Than necessarily like sitting in front of a, you know, dancing in front of a panel and then suddenly like you are the one that we're looking for. You know what I mean? It's like that. I feel like it's shifting in many ways, but of course there's gonna be that. There's always gonna be that, especially you know
the hierarchy of, well, I'm the producer, creator, teacher. You're the dancer, and you're below me. Or,
yeah,
you know? Yeah. I've definitely noticed those power structures
for sure,
especially in auditions because it's that high pressurized setting where they need, at the end of these 4 hours, they need a person, people. Yeah. You know, they have like such an important job. Yeah. So humanity kind of gets taken out of that equation.
For sure.
So sad.
Yeah. You know? And it's like, I think someone put it to me, you know, a while back, just like, I think auditioning is really much an audition both ways though too. Like just because they like you, you might not like them, or you might not like how the company operates or the vibe and everything. Right. So it's like they also have to be a great fit for you as well too. So great reframing. Yeah, just because I feel like dancers need to we have so much value and worth by even just showing up and showing that we're serious. So to like have, you know, environments where you're talked down on, you know, because you're young and they think they can say whatever they want to you, like I just don't think that's serving anybody. You know. Yeah, and I also think the thing of like saying like, oh, it's not personal, it's all about numbers and we just need to find somebody, but it's like it's always going to be personal because you know, you personally got your way there to make yourself, you know, present at the audition. It matters to you. You've devoted yourself to like being you know, someone who can master their craft, so it's all personal, you know. And I think for me, like I think it's like if you're bummed out or you get hurt about something, that's healthy, that's normal, because like you care about it, you know. Doesn't make it easy, but I think it's like better than kind of saying, oh, it's fine, I didn't really care anyways, you know. Right. Like that's as a defense mechanism or something too,
just kind of like, okay, forget about it. Yeah. And move on.
Yeah. Unless you really didn't care, unless it was just like, you know. A throwaway audition. For sure, totally. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for that question. Like, I feel like I don't get to talk enough about this feeling of like being with my personal choices and like owning up to them and keeping myself accountable, even if they don't go the way that I wanted them to.
Yeah, like I'm still good even though they don't think I'm good.
Oh, yeah. Oof.
Yeah, because if you didn't think you're good, then you wouldn't have showed up to the audition, right?
Completely.
So you have confidence in yourself and of what you can bring to the table, you know. And for someone to say, you know yourself better than you over the past, you know, how long that you've been dancing, for someone to say, I've seen you for a few hours and I know exactly who you are, is, you know, that's completely BS.
So limiting and boxed in. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, thank you for that question.
No, yeah.
It's a great way to finish.
For sure.
Everyone go audition and make it matter to themselves.
Yeah.
Before we do head out of the podcast land, where can people find you if they want to know more about you?
Instagram. Sweet. Yeah. __ Kevin Matthew Lau. just to plug in.
Why _?
Apparently 2 _ and single was taken, so I'm gonna go with triple. Yeah. That's where we're at.
That's so good. Hey, 3 times a charm.
Exactly. Yeah. So mostly Instagram. I also have just a link tree, obviously on my bio there. And Yeah, I don't really use Facebook or Twitter or anything of that sort, so that's probably the best way.
Okay, great.
Yeah, or also email too, as well too, which you can also find on my Instagram too. So
sweet.
Yeah,
I'll link all that below.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for your time.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
All of your offerings too. I'm excited to listen back to this. It feels like
yeah,
so therapeutic.
Oh, for me as well too.
Oh, great.
For me as well, yeah, very much so. I just it's just really nice to talk about this. I just feel like conversations like this isn't talked about enough.
Completely.
So yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yay. Thank you so much for listening to the Artversations podcast. Please help the podcast community continue to grow by clicking subscribe or follow on your podcast platform and leave a review. As well, follow the podcast on Instagram at ArtVersationsPod. You'll find photos of the guest you just heard, plus highlights and quotes from each episode. Let's keep the Artversation going. Send in a DM with your thoughts about art and any questions you might have for guests. Special thank you goes out to Jen Marquez and Maxim Bartnowski for their contributions. And thank you, listener. Till next time.